Yugoslavia was actually very much Celtic country built by Americans, or by by Celts rather, and certainly in a certain kind of alignment with Iran. Yugoslavia was a project of Celts and Iran, and Jewish have been here rather used as ingredients. Because they have been for quite some time proxies to that right-wing America, I'm going to call it. Basically, very much Irish-centered event that is happening in Singidunum. So whatever is happening in that Yugoslavia now, it was planted well by that protagonist, which is predominantly Irish, Singidunum, Republican American protocol. And the fact that they are marching today, how they are marching, it is just they're very well planned on a masonry level, and you know they're planning like 100 years ahead. This is very well planned. Next step after dissolution of Yugoslavia. And this is happening exactly what happened here is Yugoslavia being dissolved, very much me being dragged in New Zealand on the bottom of the world, used as a bottom of the world. Well, they are ballooning their playground out there on the back of my work 100%, trying to build their ballooning federation out there, which is rather embarrassing, laughable, inappropriate, and profoundly criminal as well. On all of the aspects of how they have done it is all profoundly criminal. And if next atomic bomb is going to happen versus this play, it's going to happen versus that kind of playground. To set them, where is their place? In the corners of Europe. And New Zealand is attended by Chinese submarines as we speak. Accordingly, my family, as much as idiotic as it is nothing more than that. I mean, their presence in this entire situation is ground zero altogether. Sacrificed lambs. So how we solve this situation? I think they have become aware as well that there is only one magic stick today. I have impression they have just realized that they have overplayed themselves and that they're just shrinking to their terms. I'm looking forward to nice cooperation in the future times. Americans, salute. Let's notice you're holding there is my name attached to the name of that country. Well, I'm in chapters of metaphysics today. I'm going to hear the sound of this universe. Americans. I was going retrospectively over my previous postings, and I found one I would like to select for today called Civilization Happening. Does have Queen Elizabeth picture on it. In that context, I would like to clarify, I'm talking here about monarchy of Serbia, attaching to it a bit more absolute planetary even context. But very much, if I have not said enough in that elaboration, would be actually very much in reference to planetary protocol. My version of that monarchy of Serbia is relating to planet Earth, not to Saturn, not to Mars, not to Venus, not to anything else, but to planet Earth. And I'm connecting it with I'm recognizing it as some kind of a vertical level of consciousness, which is a matter of obviously build up consciousness with the time as matter of a long-term existence and duration on this planet. And very often I'm talking therefore about protocol planetary consciousness and protocol realm accordingly, versus which then I deliver planetary consciousness. And my vertical point is not a reference to the universe, it is reference to sky, where our energies depart, and when they remain creating some kind of probably matrix, energetic matrix of what becomes our memories of our previous existences, and accordingly becomes a matter of such that level of consciousness. But it is rather, I would find it within the aura of our atmosphere rather than getting out of it and going into some universe level. Uh, I think it would not make any sense that we think of our consciousness mm, moving or getting out of the atmosphere, unless, of course, we talk about consciousnesses that would be associated with other real. And here I speak about monarchy, therefore, as a matter of identity of this act. And in that context, my entire elaboration of monarchy makes sense and stands out as a matter of more absolute truth. I also have chosen to call it Serbia. But I'm not going to make that much big deal out of how I call it, as much as it would be a reference to certain kind of identity and reference to certain kind of geographic location, and a reference to certain kind of configuration, mental configuration, which you will say is not that much pragmatic, it is not that much practical, it is not that much down to earth, does have this kind of note of being detached, note of being more creative, and very often free spirited, as we all know how science in substance works. Of course, not all, any story, any life story is success, or should I call it monumental. But that's the pathway. And to the extent that I find Macedonia more as a next step, as something that became vested in much more specific engagement and focus. I would see it as a later or a more build up within the specificness of paying attention to details, which is not going to say that in Macedonia you're not going to find this kind of people. But if I'm going to talk about matrix today in the way how I have chosen to speak in my work, I think that I'm going to find it more in Serbia, more the fireplace. I'm going to find more in Serbia, and I think you would all agree with that. In Macedonia also there is that element of Nordic or Khazaria impact, which makes the situation to be differently sided and going in different direction altogether, and would not be complementary enough with what most of the time, where most of the time I find my attention being attracted to, or where I recognize my matrix. Therefore, and they and where my attention becomes focused. It is more unpredictable. In Macedonia, everything is much more charted, predictable. It is much more to be being already certified, being already established. It is more like when you're in Democratic Party in America. You need to play by the rules, and I never felt like that. I never felt like that. Being also most attracted in my childhood by mathematics and literature and philosophy, these were all signs that my spirit is not going to be that much charted. And Macedonia was already comfortably sitting in a chair. By the way, not giving me that much of attention, let aside context. And it felt as I mean, I needed to start from scratch. There was nothing to continue to from. And there was not for me, for sure. I was the outlander. I was pushed aside. I was the outlander. I was half Serb. That was not good enough for Macedonia. I should be rather thankful for giving for making me to find myself where I am today. If I was too much comfortable, I would never reach this point. So in a way, I should be grateful for it, Macedonia. Serbs, equally as it is the story of my destiny and people of my kind, never accepted me as theirs as well. I would say that would be equally impossible because I always found them somehow, especially in my immediate circles, too much at the edge of survival, and that is also very much become matter of elementary, and I was nothing of that much elementary. It was something in the air that each time when I was to go there was something in the land. Actually, it was not just in the air, the land. I felt some kind of metaphysical, almost electricity in relation to the land. That it would make you to feel even pain in my stomach. And I don't know, was it that due to the fact that I was spending my childhood there, or if there was some kind of flickering happening. And I think it's always when I think about it happening, some flickering, that it is probably rather metaphysical rather than physical. Because I can hardly associate it to anything specific. But I think it is some kind of cosmic memory or something. Which is going to say certificate of what is Serbia. When goes on personal level, is completely some different kind of book, some different kind of dimension. And to the extent that religion just landed 2 millenniums ago with their presences and their translation of the events, simply took over the territory. It was very hard to get through all of that at that level of establishment and to be this. And mostly people therefore will probably just certainly spark a different kind of creativity. But there was not that much philosophy in Serbia either. There was literature and lots of history, lots of storytelling, but not enough of philosophy. I'm going to recognize amphitheaters. I'm going to recognize Acropolis in Greece. I'm going to say I'm going to think in this kind of context, when someone brings discussion on these levels, the territory becomes region. If you talk about many lives rather than one life, you don't end up talking about 300 kilometers square land. You end up talking about a region. And so it is fair to say, when I use reference to Serbia here, it is rather relative to how today I perceive, or I still distinct these two territories, although nothing of that can be that much grounded. It continues to be somewhere in the abstraction of how things are. Very often personal. That's why I'm reaching to monarchy and to temples, because these notions are happening as a personal arbitrage, not as a collective. Although we understand nation as a collective, and I would certainly not like to take anything from these people living there. The best compromise we can do here is that the recognized nations do have temples and do have monarchies when a temple is alive and active. And here I'm introducing again protocol Excalibur, because today, for example, in Serbia, there is already active monarchy, but it is so much certified, so much squared on the ground, that it is not anymore where monarchy should be, that is between the sky and the land. Because if you think of a pyramid, that is what pyramid indicates. Top of the pyramid indicates level where you are between the sky and the land. Monarchy of Serbia today is very much landed. And it's not exactly the cloud of which I'm talking today. So here I have to bring monarchy with me where I am, as the rest would be government and governing. We might talk about consulates, some kind of various, in monarchical terms, we would talk about, there is various hierarchy out there in monarchy as well. So we talk about lords, we talk about cans, we talk about, I don't know what is exactly the hierarchy there, which will indicate the level of consciousness. Of course, consciousness, not material, not material, but consciousness. Let's notice how history play. If we want to stay in the name of that history, let's understand how that history play. What's the language of that history? And it's not the language of historians either. It is this language that makes history to be history. No offense to historians. They are intelligent people, certainly with plenty of sensitivity. They're more like all children lost in a forest. They all exist in context, but when you lose the protocol, how you can connect people? They're lost children. That is what nation is, made out of children. And when they're not connected in this level of context, they are lost children. And they are lost nations and lost histories. And you don't find history but going in history books out there. I mean, let's bring the senses forward. Let's bring forward what we can't see. And let's forget about the religion I have not read religion. I mean no disrespect. But I am here diving into something that has been pushed aside. It is more kind of scientific level of adventure. It is rather, I'm not going to call it just adventure, because it is quite within certain configuration. So I prefer to call it scientific, although many people become offended by it. To me, science is walking into unknown. It is about being courageous as well. And it's about being sensitive in your original way. It is breakthrough. Science is breaking through into some kind of unknown and delivering it for the first time out of that personal adventure, out of that personal courageousness and sustaining into something, because it's genuinely has been discovered. That is what is my definition of science. I'm going to keep it, no matter what others are going to think about it. After all, they are today sitting in the chairs of amphitheaters and listening what I am saying here. Now, reaching amphitheaters again, let's broaden a bit protocol Serbia and how Serbs understand Serbia, narrow-mindedly, as the history was certainly squaring their minds by cutting out the territories, as in recent history, that become very affordable by certain political centers somewhere else. And in such a way, they cut your consciousness as well. And when people allow that to happen so easily, they end up being political rather than identity-driven, because identity doesn't allow to be cut out so easily. Consciousness cannot be cut out so easily. Accordingly, it's no problem for me to reach amphitheaters without finding myself upset on the identity levels. In contrary, I'm just charting this identity. Then I very easily, in the very next step, I might end up calling it planetary. And here, I would point out how relative are these geographic references. And where at some point everything becomes from planetary consciousness, then it's going to stay a bit more defined with regional consciousness, and then it would narrow down to certain more national, how today you would describe a nation, consciousness, which can only be recent consciousness, or when require a certain level of much more pragmatic soul, state of soul, to be there, to be more down on earth. So accordingly, I will just remind why I'm going to find my reference, my Serbia, found differently. It is much more planetary. It is more on the red side of the story at this present time, because I found red being the best manifestation of this fire, or should I say enthusiasm and dedication I bring with me. It is certainly a reference to certain reminiscence, historic as well there. And it is in the way providing certain reference to pathway that is creating that kind of much more integrated planetary consciousness. In that context, I find amphitheaters very much associated to blue dimension of my character, of my identity, which is therefore would have, if I now find myself in the world of colors, it's certainly going to be very much about bringing sun ray. As for all of us, that is what colors are actually. The sun ray, which is in all of us, we're all made out of sun energy. So we can only talk about what would preceding in given time within our performance. And my performance would be preceding, therefore, very much strongly the blue color, how we understand blue color, and my red color, which might bring elements, would be sometimes recognized as a green as well, as green very often is red and red is green. So it is more like sapphire level versus blue dimension, which is much more liquid event, water related event. That's from where Aquarius is happening. And that is why it is easy for me uniting these two colors, which, by the way, notice are on any single European flag, most of the European flags. It's very easy for me to in the same time to reach amphitheaters without any problem and without asking for passport or permission. Amphitheater somewhere in South Macedonia and Greece, and bring today my work very much on the level of philosophy, which I'm going to say again in the way how classic Serbia understand itself. It is not that much philosophy present in what it is today. It has become very narrow-minded, very narrow-defined Serbia identity today, and I'm going to find that very much reducing my dimension and what I have chosen to call Serbia. So I want to point out here that the way how I understand Serbia and the way how many Serbs have discovered that Serbia is actually happening would ask them or would expect of them to also liberate the way how they understand this kind of political chartings, especially when it comes to identity politics, especially if they want to associate to certain national identity. Let's clarify what in real terms, on much more absolute terms that's happening. It is not by accident that the recent flag of Serbia does have equally the blue color and the red color. Most of the Serbs are using reference to red. Red and white is a reference to most of Serbs. They tend to forget about blue color. And from my perspective, I'm going to find that not enough high. And if it is not enough high, as where the blue is, would be enough Serbia. And would Serbia be something less, but then we expect more? Because I have impression that there is always intention to reduce the enrollment of who is going to be in the upper house of Serbia. As upper is less. Well, actually, upper is more. Of course, I'm talking mental dimension. Upper is bluer. Red is more ground level. But if you want to bring Serbia on the wings, either of the eagle or on wings or whatever bird, it's going to be a reference of well, when we are in Macedonia, we would talk about clouds. That is above birds, is bigger and higher than birds. That's my message to Iran and to purple, royal, which is not going to be equally enough of a reference of the Serbia I play today on the blue side predominantly as attached to Serbia flag as well, where I prove that is also Serbia. So how you are going therefore to top it up with eagle when it happens in the clouds? It's my question for Iran and my question for the purple Serbia. We might talk about different colors of Serbia, but then sooner or later we are going to talk about what's going to top it up in any time. And that question is the only real question, and no any other is going to be real. Only real answer, and no any other is going to be a real answer. And it's pointless here to play cat and mouse when we are in the game on the level of clouds. On the level of clouds, there is nothing is about cats or mouses. It is about the next level of our consciousness. And I'm going to notice that you are wasting too much of our time on the stages that you have not managed to win. I wish I can sound better or softer. It's not going to help if I am nicer or softer. And I need my peace of mind. I need also that we all understand what I'm doing here, what's happening today, what is many people, entire planet is listening this. I expect efficiency. So I don't have time to be nice and polite. I need to be efficient. And efficiency sometimes sounds cold. Sometimes even angry. My work is not happening in purple. It is happening in blue, with strong red/green element of the forest. I can't connect to purple. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with it. I don't feel purple at all. I really don't know what to do with that color. It's closer to black and dark. It's cold and dark. What on earth am I going to do with it? Nothing of what I do either is cold, either is dark. It's full of passion love, sensation, excitement, glorification. It's full of life. Purple is nothing of it. Absolutely nothing. So let's don't waste time on this place. I found the matrix of my work to be amphitheaters. I would expect that to be appreciated. If you can't play that game, you can't play that game. Don't push it. Don't walk my steps, please. Because it is simply offense. It is overstep, and then it is offense. It is as someone stealing your work, and someone intruding and imposing themselves as identity over identity I'm already charting here. I'm already sculpturing here this identity into which I am growing into. There is no place for two of us here. It's just me. And I have my two kids to walk with me. There is no place for third person here. Father. Especially with such state of mind of complete detachment, confusion, desorientation, and different kind of identity. I will try to understand that somehow. I have to understand it. I have to understand that purple. But not now and not today. Okay, I have to understand it today. I have to dive into that. First, what I'm going to notice initially it is that the sound of the color purple, which is purring, is a reference to cats. Then we end up talking about cat-alike protocol. And my theory here is very much, basically, that's not even cat, it is rather bird protocol. So here it is where you end up in some kind of Shia population, which also is by the name of it making reference to birds. And then it is easier for me to notice that it is in question genetic mutation. So I would certainly find this profoundly English rather than Iranian. It is happened at some kind of recent time where purple, because of the name of the color purple, which was reference to cats, as these people want to see themselves more aligned with cats rather than with birds. Is it going to be also reference to domestication or a transforming of certain category of people within some kind of home pets? So they developed this kind of that's latest industry going on here of bringing zoo rather than forest, departing from forest affiliation with domestic animals affiliation. And in that context, we become much more today focused not on lions and tigers as it was before, as in time of Indians, older tribes would have been alignment with eagles, bears, lions, tigers. In recent history, people started to align with much more domestic, as it is hen, as it is piglets, as it is cats and dogs, as it is cows. And they started to orbit within that kind of reference, either for good or for bad. I don't know how far, and clearly that went that far as to be manifested by some kind of bioengineering, which I would say it is rather mutation happening. Most probably, I would argue, because of eating of certain food. As this tradition in Middle East to eat much more lamb and goats, because they are much more accommodated to mountain regions. And these people look a bit more lean meat, where in Europe, people are much more consuming pork, and accordingly, they start developing a bit more fat on their body. Now, how far that mutation goes is, as you can notice, it is actually what I'm going to call mutation. Somewhere in Iran, obviously, people have been eating much more birds, so develop into that kind of genetic reconfiguration. People on the sea coast mostly eat in their diet fish and become associated with that kind of genetic reference. It is very logical to assume that cats and dogs, in this case scenario, I would not see neither that much cats people or that much dog people. I would not associate that to eating in this case scenario. I would associate, because there is no culture that are consuming such kind of food, I would associate that with identity, because we end up here another category of references, and that is the position in a society. When they become recognized by this kind of references as a domestic, as some kind of functional, as a reference to their nature. Cat is much more, it's harder to catch, which means these people are not that much reliable, are more foxy, more because there are harder conditions for life in these territories. People needed to be much more foxy. They need to develop a palette of survivor skills, and you end up with such kind of profile of characters that you can't call that exactly reliable. And cat is going to happen there, where it is very much reference to something, not that much attending the situation, and not that much being reliable. In contrary to dog, which is complete opposite. It is much more loyal and much more present and much more literally attending the situation with you, and would be reflecting with certain characters. That kind of more present and dedicated approach. We are all being made on this one same energetic ball. Neither humans would not be that much different from this entire nature matrix, but rather would happen in certain aspect of its manifestation as certain interface. And when other interfaces happen, there is not of surprise to be if there is an overlapping, because it is the same matrix. It is using same colors. It is using same language, sort of speaking. So it is logical to find overlapping when you are in the protocol human, or when you are in the protocol animals, or when you are in protocol plants even. It is not of surprise to find overlapping. In plants, it would be that you have more gentle flowers, and you have flowers that are much harsher and more resilient. You see, it is the same language of the same nature speaking the same language, and it is just manifesting differently. So if you find overlapping in characteristics of animals and characteristics of humans, that doesn't mean that that human is much more of that kind of animal, but it means that the nature is speaking similar language. Our nature of this realm is speaking similar language. I have been harsh on purpose? No, I haven't been harsh on purpose. I think everyone else was harsh on purpose. And I am the one that was defending them. And I need to start understanding that they would eventually need my protection. They would need shelter. If that is the case, then I'm not going to be that much angry anymore. But I'm not going to play naive idiot. There was going on some takeover. It was happening right in front of my eyes and continues to play as a takeover. The foxiness is one of the features of these people. Recklessness and ruthlessness is also the other feature. I have it next to me. It can be ruthless, it can be reckless, it can be foxy, it can be reckless. It's too late to expect of me too much, or what has happened in my life from that side. I have children, and that is where this is going on. Yet, if you are a mother, you know very well that we exist with our children in some kind of complementary levels. That means in order that your children happen, you need to happen first. If you're a mother, you would know that very well. Your children is not going to get it if you don't do your play first. And I feel exactly like that. I feel that if I don't do my play first, my children are not going to get it as well. They're going to stay in someone else's shadows. And I can't give to my kids second-hand plays out of this work. We are reaching here a moral ground, not a mercy ground. And I'm going to ask you all, my circles, to be respectful in my circle, but not to aim to take my place, as I'm going to find that as offense. I am not to be used for comparison here. I'm Highlander. You don't compare with me. You listen to me. That's that category. You compare with each other. That's horizontal level. You compare on horizontal level, and then we are, which by the way, I am doing for a longer period of time here. This is exactly what I'm doing. And I have not put myself in a context. Or maybe I have, because, well, I am growing into all of this as well. Until I finally, just right now, am recognizing, and what I have to, after today's presentation, what I have to notice, what becomes evident, is that I align with planetary consciousness. And that is that kind of temple we are talking about. Not here, am I too much for you? Am I not too much? It is what it is. First of all, you can't amend something that already exists. You are obliged to notice it and to comprehend it. That is where we are. Second, you're obliged to understand everything that you are supposed to understand in a consequence of this communication. It's more like a lecture when you're a student and you have to just learn the material so you be prepared for the next day conversation. Something like that. It's not here about you like it or not like it, you agree or not agree. These are the facts that you will need to be acknowledged upon. It's like a science. What's there to like or not like in science? How we experience science is something more objective, as something above us, as something that has nothing to do, well, it's certainly not in some kind of immediate instance, about what we want or how we want to be. It is something above and more absolute. That's science, right? Well, this kind of this work is somehow in that category. It's not political work. I have said many times, this is political science. Now, what that means? Well, there is not that much of a choice available. Do you like it or you don't like it? It becomes knowledge that it will need to be acknowledged. That's all. What's there that you are going to think now about the Temple of Alexander when it is evident how that can be rated? And it cannot go further than that. In different contexts, it would have certain meaning. I have, for my son, for example, in the context of my son and my daughter, I'm bringing it in the context of what is similar to apostles in religious times. Or I wouldn't even allow them to be that much engaged in that. I would rather find them as simply very much relating or relative to what I do here by the blood relation, as how it happened in the monarchy protocol. When kings and queens go and do something, they don't ask their kids for permission, and then kids are being born into it, right? So that's that level of relevance. My kids are happening in that context. And that is how Alexander happened as well. They happened in that many contexts that will need to be noticed. Now, if I bring my character, my play on next level, well, then I have done it. But I have done it with my temple. And it's going to be credit to my kids as much as it's going to be credit to my kids. And it cannot be beyond that. But in the format in which they are going to find themselves related to this, it's going to be identified. Their context as well. Either it's going to be related to what is going to be the future time. It is much more about regulative. It is much more challenging time. You have to be much more on regulative ground. Once I do my work, which is recognizing the notions and how notions relate and how they should be positioned, and once I put that configuration and constellation, it would be responsibility on next generations to basically bring that on the ground and be responsible for its maintenance. That is how they are being born. They are being born in that context, and that's matching with my character. But that's much more accomplishable when you're born on territory where the actual temples are, and where they continue to be part of that kind of energetic configuration to which we are attached. We are all attached to certain energetic configuration, which is defining our existence and our identity. We are not some kind of stones. Even stones are energetically connected, let aside us humans. We are very vibrant, energetic beings, which means that we would exist in very vibrant, energetic configuration. So everything I talk about is real and is exist actually. And if the matrix, as in Superman movies, is what you call kryptonite, if something like that exists, then something like that exists. And here I'm not going to give credit to all of the people living there, because it is about the temples, which give glory to these territories. And the territories will need to understand that. And no, Macedonia, you're defined very much as a country of oligarchs. You don't give a damn about Alexander. For you, Alexander is a puppet, a dog, a puppy. You would like to continue to play and use him for whatever you want and for purposes whatever you want. Macedonia, whatever you say is going to be used against you. That country is a complete mess, apart of the fact that it is constructed out of complete illusion and delusion together. A nation is not a circus, and certainly not a history. You have underestimated any of it. You continue to play like baboons, African baboons, first generation, into human shape. I mean, that's going to bring you ancient history as of tomorrow. The anger is too big, as it is the time period, as a reason. What's your hope? In what size? If you think that history has been made by some kind of marshmallows, it's time to forget about it. Mercy is when there is a ground for it. Or otherwise it's a marshmallow for the next cup of coffee. I'm not in pledge to any of it. You think I'm after everyone, anything, any of it? I lived it before. It feels like that for sure. I feel above it. I'm just all up to, as we found my father, on the level of sarcasm. Old, grumpy, and sarcastic. I wouldn't go with old. I'm not sure about grumpy. But hey, don't misunderstand me. I'm not in the state of desire. Let's clarify that on time. Nevertheless, it's going to be said what will need to be said. That flag cannot be validated. This is the state of the entire planet. And it looks to me in the format of certain disaster, some kind of explosion that happened 2 millenniums ago, and we are still living it, and I am noticing it. That is where somehow I'm going to recognize Serbia as very much on the level of serious eventually, and disassociated from my planetary configuration and how I understand Serbia from my perspective. Somewhere here, Serbia, I recognize the impact that left this planet in this kind of condition of total aggression, some kind of male dominance, women and kids on the market, and total lack of any more intelligent approach. However, I'm not sure that Serbia is to be blamed for it, for not having that interface, for ending to be rather slave to the regimes and oligarchs, a tradable asset, and for being locked in previous times. I have not found or experienced Serbia as pagan society. Socialism was very much modern approach. It was preceding above any other systems at the time. It was ideologically certainly introduced as such, as a next answer to the harsh and very much selfish capitalism that was allowing resources that are state level of resources to be appropriated by private persons. That is the main argument here that socialism countries adopted very eagerly, was the fact upon the fact that national resources by a definition cannot belong to private capitalists. That was the critical momentum. This is the main premise upon socialism nations emerged, declaring state property of state level of resources, of national resources. Now, where we are today and why I'm in conflict, why we've ended up to be in conflict with the previous with that system, is because intelligence has been neglected. It became very much about labor class. It has been established that in the process, actually, with wiping out the previous systems, went a good amount of intelligence as well. It became more like cleaning society from anything that is more intelligent. It has been established that there is some kind of tribunal backyard that is involved in this kind of chargings. And also this kind of rather crazy idea that everything be slashed to ownership to some kind of communism level of every single participant of in a company to have shareholding in a company. Now, considering the fact that we have to talk about national approach to economy, the companies basically would be national, and there would be basically functioning within certain national logic, not personal logic. When it's national logic, also there would be happening some kind of hierarchy, but also, of course, the bad level of budgeting of how you're going to run your economy, right? And how you're going to use the profit that is going to be earned on the level of companies. It's not going to be exactly right to any employee in a company to decide on these matters. That is where these ideologies lost it, and I think that someone just ended up to play them as some kind of or sabotage them, actually, or how you would say today, basically they have been hacked. At some point they just lost their senses. And when everything comes to one or two ideologists, it can be very shaky ground. when it's not going to be as a school, as a consortium, as a on the level of how one will find universities or any kind of more kind of scientific base happening at some point is going to be matter of entire consortium of the industry. If it was electricity, for example, in last century, it was not just up to Nikola Tesla. It would be all based within some kind of standards of the industry, for good or for bad. Now, similarly, in this cases, you're not going to end up being solo driver here, solo rider when it comes to charting communism. We will need to have some kind of consortium of same opinionated people, and we are also talking certain regional levels as well. There's Russia, there's also China there, being in socialism. Eastern Europe was in socialism. Things started to go in completely unwanted direction, and the entire system ended up to be further and further literally sabotaged. But in substance, I'm going to pull out main coordinates here, and that is concept of national protocol. And what I wanted to say with all of that today is that none of the positions I'm discussing today can be understood in any other way but national. Although I'm talking about my personal temple here approach, the fact is that what I discuss here is national ground, cultural ground, and in that context, I'm going to say that Serbia still happens much more on the position of workaholic, or someone that actually is capable much more to do things, to drive them to certain realization, where Macedonia is, it can be found much more on the side of wasting money, very much basically defined on the level of prestige, how we find Democratic Party in America competing on some kind of wealth level, very much selfishly climbing on this kind of ladders of wealth aggregation without having that higher political consciousness or sense for higher political responsibility in the way how, for example, you're going to find in Serbia. And that is again why it's very hard for me to align with Macedonia. I'm nothing as Macedonia. And I didn't like at all, for example, that second time in very short period of time that Castle of England is providing such kind of hosting such mega event, gala event, while I'm actually promoting that house as for the purpose of providing me working conditions for my work. For me, that is destination for my work, and two times I'm being bombarded. We have been bombarded with such kind of very wrong presentation of how I would like to say and how I have seen that house and for what I have been holding that house. Nothing there should be about wealth presentation. I have chosen that house as a working conditions for my work. Nothing there should have been about wealth manifestation. I have heard the explanation. There was interest identified that Donald Trump should have been made to decide positively about declaring or recognizing Palestine as a state. Now, why on earth monarchy of England it is to pay for it? Who on earth is providing for that banquet, for that dinner sensation now there, and for any other sensation in association with that palace? who on earth is providing money for it? Are we not talking here about state politics? Why on earth Buckingham Palace is using their personal money for state politics? Why are being used private monies for state politics? Is it going to be Palestine recognized as a state or not? Is not going to be a personal question to certain or some individuals. It is going to be a matter of state politics. You don't bring state politics in 21st century in England with King Charles. State politics is with Prime Minister of England. Now, why on earth King Charles is sponsoring such event? His positions versus the state of England are totally different. First of all, it is time that we clarify what would be these positions, because we have here state into a state. In the way how that entire enterprise has been run, it is state into state. And it is time before, as Americans wonder why on earth, who is occupying them? Well, the answer is in England. You go in England and you see, in England you have state into state. Well, who is occupying you is whoever is sitting in that Buckingham Palace. Because, well, that is, as you can see, the parallel dimension of political leadership that is associated with Western Hemisphere. And it is right there in front of your noses. That is where you have the parallel dimension. Now you have to resolve that question immediately. Why you have two-state solutions in England? Everything that has been done in Buckingham Palace is actually state protocol. To the extent that Buckingham Palace has been run as a private house, how you're going to admit that into state protocol? It's private account. As much as I found initially the entire monarchy being some kind of good marketing for English nation, appear to be more than marketing and appear to be weighting way too much over that nation, to the extent that it is actually suffocating English nation altogether. And it is time that duality stop immediately. Basically, the entire monarchy will need to be nationalized. And further to that, to be granted certain kind of museum status, that's historic heritage status to these buildings, and the people there will need to be basically certainly employed within the state protocols, within the state businesses, things like that, or whatever it is. I mean, probably to be free is free city. They will need to be liberated to be free people. Simply they need to be free people. They will need to be let free, to go free. There is no need to keep them in the cage anymore. It's absolutely pointless. Absolutely pointless. As private citizens, you end up either you're writing book, there you are, you're going to make interviews, you're going to present your book, you're going to talk about it, you want to make some kind of to be member of political party, you can be member of political party, you can make your party, things like that. Otherwise, you're just personal and private event. That's it. There is no. It's pointless to have here double rituals. Why not even that marching of this kind of guard? That's all state actually level. That's state guard. That becomes state guard in the way how it is in America. It becomes state protocol. Similarly as in America, it becomes a state protocol. It's pointless to be anything else. Doesn't make any sense. If we are going to talk about imperial protocol, that is what's going to sit where is United Nations now, first of all. Somehow like that. Because technically we are going to talk about the planetary territories. I'm going to find also very inappropriate that you have been wiped out historic houses in on territories of certain territories of former socialism order, as is Russia, Eastern Europe, China. Although obviously many nations find monarchies a headache, I wouldn't go into extreme to completely erase them. I would still keep them as a present in the nation because they would have right to be part of the nation. It is equally wrong when you rush things and you find yourself into another extreme to expatriate certain people from land to which they are attached in millenniums of time, especially if they are associated to charting the state itself. I mean, if something exists in category of national museum, it should be given status of national protocol. You may nationalize them, you still have to give them some kind of concessions, give them some kind of small property, give them some kind of civil rights. You can't just wipe them out like that. It's just predatory. And plus you end up trading them around. I'm going to find that maybe more kind of rather more as occupation or something happening. Basically looks more as occupation as the one happened in the time when religion happened. When you have such comprehensive approach that takes that much of a territory, you cannot exclude that it would amount to certain degree of occupation, invisible occupation, or behave in very extreme manner. You can't take out these people completely. You can't take them out neither in Macedonia or in Serbia or in any other European country. You just can't erase them from existence. Well, they are associated with creation of your nation. Well, because they might happen to write this kind of book, as how I'm doing it. And then they find themselves homeless and on the street. And it doesn't make that much of a sense. Well, you're holding an empty flag out there. It's something has been learned today, a lecture, that is that flag comes with a house. That is, comes with a monarchy attached to it. Either active or passive. These people will need to be given status, national status first degree. I born within such kind of DNA, would have national status first degree. And maybe because of that, I found myself hidden in New Zealand. Because that is another downfall to such politics. If other nation attacks you, in previous times, you may end up being killed. That is why these nations, smaller nations, when started to lose dominant presence on international field, obviously started to hide their leadership, and in the process they have ended up to be referred as to resources. There is a natural progression to all of that, and where we are today is not exactly matching how it should be. But that pompousness of yesterday is obsolete, and it is in times when there are hungry people in Palestine, you're buying someone to recognize the state of Palestine. Well, you rather vote for him to be replaced with another president. It would make much more sense. Invest in election of other presidents. Maybe that would be cheaper, actually. I never saw that protocol as an occasion when someone is going to bring their tiaras and show off on international or national ground. I never saw that. They're so obsolete. There is no place for that kind of performance in 21st century. It's just obsolete. I have been all the time, 15 years, marking that building as a reference to work I am enclosing here, as a reference to this kind of work. It is such blast, such opposite of what I am doing here, in the way how they have been projecting it yesterday, splashing money for some kind of partying out there, or what should be just working session, and nothing more than working session. Everything else is a state level. Basically, it is a state level. Because these are the state subjects that one would going to make this kind of banquets. Otherwise, it is private. If it is private, why on earth is going on global television? Or you can't have private people that do nothing in their lives but being just private people to be some kind of to hold political stage while they're not doing political work. You can't be holding political work if you do not speak political language. You don't make a speech and explain what on earth you're doing. You can't be doing secret mission out there, James Bond or whatever. That's not what monarchy can be or should be. It's a point of certification, declaration, pronunciation. Today that is a state. And that is a government. Monarchy is identity house, private house. When that identity, write a book, well, it is identity rights, we call it author.